On the northeastern tip of the great island of Borneo is Sabah, the home of the Dusun, the Murut, the Bajau and other races. Brunei, the ancient Malay Sultanate, which during the 15th century dominated almost the whole of Borneo. Largest of the three Borneo territories to join in the proposed federation is Sarawak, the land of the Dayak and Iban, Kenya and Puna. Sarawak too has many Malays and Chinese among her people.
In the east, things are not looking any brighter. The Borneo leaders are apprehensive about the idea of merger.
The Borneo territories and Malaya had hardly anything in common. In Malaya, you have, for example, you have Sultan, you have King, you have three mainstream races, whereas in Borneo now has more than 40 ethnic communities.
People in Sarawak at that time, the level of education is still very limited. The understanding of what's happening outside is quite restricted. So their concern was, if Malaysia, as they understood it, were to happen, what role can they play?
The political environment in North Borneo, Sarawak and Brunei were very different. You didn't have political parties, you didn't have a group of people who were very interested in politics. What you have was individual leaders within the community who were starting to have an interest in politics.
The Borneo people are wary about the intentions of the Tunku and Lee Kuan Yew.
Lee Kuan Yew wanted a federation between Malaya and Singapore. It made a lot of sense because Singapore had no natural resources. Tunku, on the other hand, look at if only Malaya and Singapore federate, the possibility the Malay will be outnumbered by the Chinese. And Tunku, without even having set foot in the Borneo territories, try rope in the Borneo territories. So they both want Malaysia for different reasons.
Tunku heads to Borneo on a diplomatic mission.
It was alleged that the leadership in Malaya at that time was too assumptuous that Sabah and Sarawak were just like Malays. My complaint was that lots of Malayans, people from UMNO, for example, who visited there, they would make a speech, they will come out and Assalamualaikum, come out with hadiths, everything else. Then after the event, you realize the whole group was a group of Christians.
I think the Tunku probably was naive in thinking, if we get these Borneo people, they're just like us, and that will, racially, so on and so forth, it's a counterweight to the Chinese, job done. And it wasn't as simple as that, of course.
An influential North Borneo leader emerges to oppose this plan, together with leaders from Parti Rakyat Brunei and the Sarawak United Progressive Party, or the SUPP.
There was quite a groundswell of opposition to Tunku, and he went on a number of goodwill visits. It really stirred up a lot of bad will.
After the trip to Borneo, Tunku is unsure about the future of merger. The divide between the people of Borneo and Malaya seems too wide.
In North Borneo and Sarawak, there was no religious factor. For example, the development of UMNO and PAS in Peninsular Malaysia or Malaya was all about Islam, Malay nationalism and protection of the sultans. These were non-issues in North Borneo and Sarawak because simply Islam was not a factor.
Without the participation of the Borneo states, the demographic balance will not be to Tunku's liking. Tunku is adamant that the Borneo leaders must agree to the proposal if any progress is to be made. The Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, realizes he must take up the challenge.
I was told that the man who really wanted Malaysia to come into being apart from the British, was Lee Kuan Yew himself.
Lee Kuan Yew is a real strong man. Everything he wants, he must get it. That is his character.
He wants to make a success. He wants to create this Malaysia. So if those people are not joining, I will go and tell them how good it is. It's not so much Tunku asking him. He wants it.
Malaya's Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, needs the consent of North Borneo, Sarawak and Brunei to form a greater federation together with Singapore. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew is determined to work hard to persuade them. But first, Tunku extends an invitation to the Borneo leaders to visit Malaya.
Meanwhile, representatives from Sabah and Sarawak called on the Malayan Prime Minister to obtain a first-hand idea of what the Malaysia plan would mean for their countries. In his usual sincere and frank manner, the Tunku explained that Malaysia would not only hasten their independence, it would bring untold benefits as well.
During the visit, Tunku's deputy Razak Hussain explains to the Borneo leaders the progress made since independence.
Most of us have some inkling of what Malaya was all about. It is not only Merdeka, it is Merdeka with an effort to develop our country to be better.
Razak takes the Borneo leaders on a tour.
We want to find out what is this proposal really about. We were shown around a lot of schools, a lot of new roads, a lot of new water supply, electricity. I was really impressed with the development that had been shown to us. And I even said this, that even besok pun saya bersedia masuk Malaysia.
Next, members of the legislative assemblies of Singapore, Malaya, Sarawak, Brunei and North Borneo decide to proceed with formal discussions regarding the idea.
The members decided to set up the Malaysian Solidarity Consultative Committee, and they discussed this idea that Tunku articulated in May.
Surprisingly, the committee appoints the skeptical North Borneo leader, Donald Stephen, as their chairman. For months, he has shown reluctance to the idea of bringing North Borneo to merge with Malaya. It is Singapore's Lee who recommends that Stevens heads the committee.
Kuan Yew was a very good personal friend of Donald Stevens. They meet up quite regularly, even before the idea of Malaysia was touted. They had a fair idea of how to work together.
The Malayan and Singapore leaders look at Donald Stephen as the most influential, the most articulate, and possibly at the time, the most literate of the Borneo Territories leaders.
Sambutan tiba serta-merta. Ahli-ahli mesyuarat dari ke-5 wilayah itu melapaskan kesanggupannya atas gagasan Malaysia itu. Persetujuan ini adalah satu keagungan dalam persidangan pertama Jawatan Kuasa Perunding Sejakawan Malaysia di Jesselton pada bulan Ogos tahun itu.
Discussions are intense and many issues are debated. Ultimately, it comes down to one question.
There is nothing else they really want to find out but to find out from us or from the people whether we want Malaysia or whether we do not want Malaysia.
Of course, Sabah and Sarawak, they're practically new to this idea. They're not so sure about their future. So instead of coming along with this idea of Tunku forming Malaysia, they were thinking of banding together with the 3S, Sabah, Sarawak, Singapore. They finally came to a resolution that all these territories should be one, including Brunei.
The committee, recommended the continuation of the present system of the appointment of His Majesty the Young Dipertuan Agong as sovereign ruler of the new federation. The new states would each have its own head of state and its own constitution. Although Islam would be the official religion, there would be complete freedom of worship.
But the work is not completely done. While the MSCC is holding discussions, Singapore's Prime Minister Lee is facing tough opposition to merger in his own country. His opponents in the Socialist Front, or Barisan Socialists, say that the process must not be rushed. But Lee Kuan Yew has made merger a key pillar of his manifesto. Lee knows he must win the Singaporean public to his side.
Good evening. Soon, you will have to decide on your future. In the next few months, we shall settle the constitutional arrangements for merger. Merger is going to take place, not just because it's the desire of the PAP, or merely because it is the wish of the Federation Alliance government. It is as inevitable as the rising and setting of the sun.
He engages in a series of 12 radio broadcasts.
The battle for merger was really a battle for the hearts and minds of the population in Singapore, because it pretty much at that time determined whether or not Singapore would go it alone or become independent as part of a larger political entity.
Oh yes, you work very hard for the better for the merger. We had over the radio to tell the people the merger with Malaya is good for Singapore. Singapore cannot survive by itself.
Through the radio talks, Lee Kuan Yew cautions the public about a grave threat in Singapore.
If we did not join Malaya and form Malaysia, we can have a big problem with the communists.
He uses this to drive home the idea that merger would suppress or even eliminate the threat of communism in the region.
The idea that the communist forces were advancing throughout Southeast Asia was very much a concern and fear amongst the non-communist governments and societies in Southeast Asia. So the next question was, what's going to happen to Singapore and Malaya? Very much a front in the Cold War as well.
Lee Kuan Yew works tirelessly day and night. In the next few weeks, he uses valuable airtime to ensure Singaporeans understand the urgent need to win the battle for merger. Meanwhile, the Malaysia Solidarity Consultative Committee, or MSCC, continues its meetings.
At the third meeting in Kuala Lumpur, the Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman declared that all states in Malaysia would enjoy equal rights and status. But due to the special position of Singapore, the city-state would retain local powers in labour and education. The meeting discussed the economic and financial implications of Malaysia and what it meant in terms of national development. Piece by piece, the Malaysia jigsaw fell into place to produce a glowing picture of a vigorous young nation in the making.
It was Lee Kuan Yew who managed to swing their thinking around so that they would band together and support Tunku's idea.
And Tunku's plea of good faith assures the Borneo leaders that the future is bright.
Malaysia could not have been formed in spite of the hard effort put in by Lee Kuan Yew, if not for the fact that Tunku gave his personal assurances that he will definitely take care of the people of Sabah and Sarawak, not to worry, for as long as he is the leader of this newly formed federation.
If you put your faith in his hand, he will look after it and with all the sincerity at his commands. Because of that, I think it was very easy for us to sell Malaysia.
The successful ending of the conference was celebrated by a big cultural show in which all the countries of the new nation were represented.
The Malaysian Solidarity Consultative Committee proves to be a great platform for the leaders to discuss Malaysia. In November 1961, Tunku, Lee Kuan Yew and the British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, meet in London to advance discussions about Malaysia.
The conference of November 1961 agreed two principles. The first was that British defence interests in Singapore would be preserved, and the other was that the wishes of the Borneo people should be consulted, should be ascertained.
The British established a commission of inquiry to listen firsthand to the people of Borneo about their concerns on Malaysia.
Suruhanjaya Kabul yang memulakan kerjanya dalam bulan Februari 1962 menarik minat ke 55 wilayah. Maksud tugasnya ialah untuk menentukan pendapat orang-orang Sabah dan Sarawak terhadap pembentukan Malaysia itu dan membuat syur-syur yang sewajarnya.
It was chaired by Lord Cobbold, a former governor of the Bank of England, and on it were two representatives of Malaya and two representatives of the British side who were there to, I suppose, protect the interests of the Borneo peoples.
Even at that time, there were still pockets of reservation in Sarawak. Not so much then from people from the upper rural country, but certainly within the more urban, particularly the Chinese component, there was still resistance to the idea of Malaysia. One of the arguments used to promote the idea of Malaysia is this sense of security. That security is, if you're on, you will not be safe.
In the end, the voice of the people is heard.
Tunku Abdul Rahman in particular keep on assuring that there was no plan to colonize Sarawak. It is not Malaya's intention to do that. What he wanted was a merger of people who he said were from the same stock generally. While Malaya was prepared to share their expertise, it will give them better prospect of sharing their resources.
When we put this idea to the vast majority of the people of Sarawak, said, why not? We would like to be part of Malaysia.
They went around Sabah, Sarawak, persuaded the people. They were accompanied by the leaders who said, it's good for you.
Before going back home, Soviet Premier Khrushchev gets in some parting shots at the United Nations.
Могила колониальному рабству! Долой его и похоронить его чем глубже, тем лучше!
Not since the Second World War has so much animosity and division existed between two superpowers. One of the Soviet Union's allies in Southeast Asia is uneasy with the developments in the region.
He saw the creation of Malaysia as actually a neo-colonial creation of the British. In other words, the British in name pulled out, but actually they are still there through their proxies in Tunku and Lee Kuan Yew.
President Sukarno stokes the fires on the international stage to divert attention from issues at home.
Sukarno had a lot of domestic problems. He was making a very delicate balance between the communists and the military who hated each other, and he was maintaining that balance. Now, so he decided that the best way to deal with that was to turn attention outside. So when the idea of Malaysia was mooted, he said, what is this?
A diplomat at heart, Malaya's Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman tries to persuade Sukarno to back down from his aggressive stance. Nothing must come in the way of forming Malaysia.
Babak seterusnya kini beralih ke London. Persidangan penting mengenai Malaysia diadakan di antara pemimpin-pemimpin Melaya dengan jemaah menteri British. Asas perbincangan ialah laporan Suruhanjaya Kabul. Selepas sekian berunding, Tengku Abdul Rahman dan Perdana Menteri British Tuan Harold Macmillan pun mewujudkan perjanjian bersejarah atas Malaysia itu. Agung dalam persetujuan itu ialah masa peralihan dan penyerahan kedaulatan.
The date has been set in London for the new federation to be formed. As with the Merdeka mission in 1956, when Malaya secured its independence, Tunku once again has shown a deft touch when negotiating the formation of a new nation. And he is one step closer to forming one of the biggest territories in Southeast Asia.
Jalan untuk tertubuhnya negara baru Malaysia itu sudahlah terbentang dengan jelasnya. Inilah yang dikehendaki satu teladan. Karena dunia pada waktu ini bergaduh berbagai-bagai, bergaduh kerana kelas orang ni lain, bergaduh kerana bangsa orang ni lain, bergaduh kerana bahasa orang ini lain, bergaduh kerana agama orang ini lain. Tapi bagi pihak kita, kita boleh hidup dengan baik, dengan manis muka, dengan perasaan kasih mesra antara satu dengan lain. Tidak terkira apa bangsa, apa agama, apa rupa, apa kulit, apa pun kita tak kira, asal kita boleh duduk sama sekali sebagai satu bangsa. Hidup Malaysia! Hidup Malaysia! Merdeka Malaysia! Merdeka Malaysia! Saya minta rakan saya, Encik Lee Kuan Yew, bagi sepatah dua cakapan kepada tuan-tuan. Sudah 100 lebih tahun Singapura menjadi satu pusat perniagaan dalam Asia Tenggara. Dan 1.600.000 lebih orang di Singapura adalah kebolehan, keusahaan yang boleh menolong negeri kita menjadi satu negeri yang lebih bahagia. Itulah maksud Persekutuan Malaysia. Bukan sebagai Radio Moskow cakap ini apa penjajahan yang baru. Kalau bukan kaki tangannya kuasai negeri, dia kata itu penjajahan baru. Tapi kalau kaki tangannya sendiri, dia kata itu bagus, itu kemerdekaan yang bebas, dia kata. Merdeka Malaysia! Bersemangat sikit tuan-tuan. Kalau lemah begini, tak dapat merdeka Malaysia. Merdeka Malaysia! Terima kasih tuan-tuan.
Kita akui dengan sombong dan megah akan kejayaannya yang cemerlang. Allah lanjutkanlah usianya memandu untung nasib negara baru kita. Merdeka Malaysia!